Hey guys, welcome to the virtual Backstop. Here we are coming at you strong once again. Of course, here with the Dr. Baseball, Eric Lenaburg, and Jim Campanis Jr., author, born into baseball and former Seattle Mariner. Obviously from a family of wonderful baseball heritage with the Campanis clan over there. So awesome stuff to talk about. More baseball going on. Braves end up taking out the Dodgers in the first game. That was a little bit of a surprise to a lot of us, but they are going against a team that finally has some pitching and has some bullpen. So we'll see how they can make adjustments there. A little bit of surprise to see Houston lose the first two games to the Rays as well, even though same deal there. They've got pitching and an amazing catch, if you did not see it, by Margot. Going over the barrier to save it out and basically help secure that last victory as Houston was trying to rally and come back. So just fantastic stuff going on there. Always amazing to talk playoff baseball with you two gentlemen. We're in the league championship series now in the mini bubbles here as we are playing. The National League clubs are playing in Texas, and the American League clubs are playing, of course, in Los Angeles and San Diego. So a lot going on there. We see so many storylines, managers with other things going on. Let's get some quick takeaways. Right now, the Braves, by the way, are playing the Dodgers right now, and they're up 2-0 in the top of the fourth inning. So let's go to Jim. Jim, what were your thoughts and your takeaways as we see the Braves really not backing down from a prohibited favored Dodgers team?
Well, and I think, Dave Roberts made a great comment after the game yesterday, and he said, look, or maybe it was even during the game, he said, we have earned a target on our back. We've played so well over the last 5 years that we deserve this target, and everybody gets ramped up to want to play us, and that puts us in a position where we have to be great, every game. And effectively, the Dodgers are a great team, and it comes down to who's great that day, right? So yesterday, the Braves were great, and the Dodgers played really, really well, no doubt. Okay, today with Kershaw going down, you could look at that one of a couple of ways, but. The Dodgers are so deep in pitching. This guy just gave up his first hit. It was a 2-run home run to Freeman, but nonetheless, the Dodgers are deep, and like Dave Roberts said, that target on their back, you don't see that. Like, there isn't a target on Atlanta's back. There isn't a target on the Rays' back. I think that as a player, you kind of like being the underdog, and when you're the favorite, there sometimes becomes this sort of like pressure, internal pressure. And I kind of believe that that's one of the things that's happened to the Dodgers in years past. And I was thinking that maybe Mookie could sort of be the difference maker, when it comes to this sort of managing this internal perceived pressure. So right now it's not looking too good, but it's only a fourth inning of the second game. So if this was a game best of five, this would be a worrisome moment for the Dodgers, but there's still a couple more opportunities for them to get back.
Definitely. I think some good points there. Erica, what are your takeaways so far as we see the Braves pushing the Dodgers a little bit here at the beginning of this series?
Well, I wasn't surprised by the Braves pitching. I was surprised by that offensive explosion they had in the ninth inning. But leading up to that, and in the days leading up to that first game yesterday, a lot of people, a lot of Dodger fans and a lot of people in the media were talking about how the Dodgers have to do something else in the ninth inning. Get Jansen out of there, and maybe not go to Joe Kelly if they don't have to. And last night they didn't do that. Bullpen got them to the ninth. It was a 1-1 tie. And then Blake Trinan came in and got hit, and McGee gave up a home run. So I don't know if you guys noticed. I'm sure you did. I don't know if our listeners noticed, but Dustin May was brought in relief and threw an inning plus and looked pretty sharp in that first inning. And I know on a previous show, Jim, you had talked about that as great he is as he is as a starter, he would be an ideal guy for a closing situation, a one inning with that 99-mile-an-hour slider he has and those types of pitches. Yeah. And what the Dodgers can do, this has been such a strange season for so many reasons. And what the Dodgers might do is close by committee through this series, and if they make it to the next round to the World Series, do the same thing. It might be a different closer every night. Rather than constantly relying on Jansen and the pressure on only him, they can go to Trinan, they can go to May, they can go to Kelly if need be. Pedro Baez has closed in the past and done a good job. So they've got the arms there. It's their offense I'm more concerned about.
Yeah.
Early in the game, they blew a few opportunities where they had runs to scoring position, less than 2 out, and didn't score. And the one thing I took away from the first 2 Tampa-Houston games was the Astros were loading the bases and leaving them loaded with no out. They had 20 men left on base yesterday, the Astros, in that game. You cannot do that and win. Having said all that, it's a 7-game series. Fortunately, like you said, Jim, if this was a 5-game series, it'd be a troublesome day right now. But a 7-game series, a lot of things can happen. We have seen, and I mentioned this to you guys in a message earlier, we've seen teams lose the first 2 games and then come back and win 4 in a row. We've seen teams lose the first 2 games and come back and win a 7-game series. So there's a lot of baseball left to go. And if the Dodgers offense doesn't pop at all today, it'll be there. You cannot keep that lineup down for 7 straight games. It's not going to happen. I don't care who's pitching. So it's going to be an interesting series. A lot of people thought it was Dodgers in 5, Dodgers in 6. Everyone assumed the Dodgers were going to win. And now when you take a look at Atlanta and see how strong that pitching is, better than advertised, really. It's going to be an interesting series. Yeah.
And that's what they do. I mean, Atlanta's known for developing these pitchers, homegrown pitchers. They'll supplement with a few guys. We talked about that before, like Hamels or whatever they need to do to supplement maybe one of the starters. But, man, they've got a lot of homegrown guys over there, or they acquired them in trade, like Sean Newcomb or whatever the case may be. And those guys seem to come through when it matters the most for the Braves, just situational pitching, which is amazing considering the turnover in staff, since Bobby Cox, obviously he was there for a long time. And then now, of course, they're on to the next couple staffs, but just amazing stuff. But I definitely want to talk about the level of concern, especially you guys who have long histories either covering or being a part of the Dodger family, really, especially with you, Jim. And I want to make sure that we do touch on the fact that, Clayton Kershaw was scratched today with back spasms, and this isn't the first time he's had back issues. Now, they said it's just spasms, which if it's just spasms, that could be just a one-day thing. It could be as simple as he starts the next game. It could be more complicated than that, depending on what's going on with that and how long it takes him to recover. What's your level of concern seeing the Dodgers are already down just 1 game in the series and hearing this about Kershaw, even though Gonsolin filled in admirably so far today?
Yeah, so the one thing about the back when it comes to the pitcher is, like, that's how they get their extension. And, Randy Johnson had back issues, and when he didn't get extension, his ball was flat and he got crushed. And he learned pretty quick about, stretching and having a whole routine. And it seems like Kershaw's in the same boat. He really gets a ton of extension, especially on those curveballs that he throws. He really gets that. And that really puts a strain, through the back area. This happened, I think, to start the year, correct? Like that's when Destin May came up. So this isn't something new to him. In fact, I think this is actually, like, I would say his Achilles heel over his career has been his back. But it could have come at a worse time, or maybe it comes at a time when maybe they can manage through this game, get a victory somehow, and then they have him to come in, maybe in the 4th game, where give what's his name, kid from Vanderbilt. Why am I forgetting his name right now? The start there, the guy threw last night.
Justin May.
No, the starter.
Buehler, Walker Buehler.
Buehler, duh, yeah, sorry.
How are we forgetting that name?
How we forgetting that name? Buehler. But yeah, so giving him an extra day's rest. This is 7 straight days of games, right? So the day one starter is used to having those 4 days off and then coming in. Well, there's no day off. There's no travel day in this year's playoff situation and World Series. So this is going to create quite a dynamic for pitchers, and I do think the Dodgers might have kind of we used to say Johnny Holstaff. Everyone on the staff is going to pitch that day. Sort of a thing. We might see that in Game 4, or we might see Kershaw come in Game 4. So I quite honestly, I don't see there's one of the things is a lot of these hitters have seen Kershaw for many years, and probably not too many of them have seen Gonsolin out there. So.
Right.
I gotta believe there's a little bit of an advantage for the Dodgers on that, but right now we're sitting in the 4th inning and the bats they've outscored the opponents I think they had the greatest differential in all of baseball this past year.
They did.
And it's not working so far with the Braves.
Right, and right
No.
now with a 2-0 deficit to the Braves, 2 runs should mean nothing to the Dodgers. They should be scoring 4 and 5 runs. Regarding Kershaw, something you said, Jim, that I don't think a lot of people grasp. This might be a positive for them as the series goes on, that he didn't pitch a second game, and he may not pitch until the 4th game. I give him credit, number one, for recognizing he had whatever it was, a spasm, and going to the staff and letting them know. Because in the past, I've known pitchers, and you have too, I'm sure, Jim, that had issues like that, didn't say anything, they wanted to be a hero, and they went out and got crushed. And I believe in the past, I'm talking years ago, I think Kershaw might have done that himself, just not said anything and said, I've got to win, we have to win. But he didn't. I give him credit for that. And let's say he can't appear in this league championship series at all. Okay, well, you've got Walker Buehler, you've got Julio Urias, you've got Dustin May, you've got Tony Gonsolin. Those are 4 solid starters right there. You got the pitchers already talked about coming out of the pen. A guy I didn't mention, Victor Gonzalez, who has been fantastic out of the bullpen last night. He came in last night and threw a great inning. He can also start. And they can go to the Johnny Holstaff method. So, it's not a horrible disaster for the Dodgers like some people might think. Because who knows? He might have gone out there and gotten rocked today. And to limit his innings pitched in this particular series, as long as they win, that's the key. To limit his innings pitched is critical, I think. And you never know. We may see Kershaw come in the 6th or 7th game out of the pen.
Well, you would think too that because of his leadership in being the guy that, MVP, Cy Young, the dominant pitcher really of the decade that he's in and of the era that he's in, that these other pitchers look to him. So just having him around is going to help them, with their confidence, and they can go to him and ask questions about pitching these guys and different approaches, maybe when something's not working. I mean, you would think that that's just invaluable. And then, of course, now the offense and, of course, the whole team, but mainly the offense has that as well with Betts. Even though Bellinger's a bona fide stud, he's still a really young guy. People forget that. Bellinger is still just a really young guy, and he can hit, but he's going to have his struggles. He's going to see things still that he hasn't seen before just because he probably hasn't seen it before, like literally hasn't seen it before. So that's what their coaches are there for and all this stuff. But having a guy like Kershaw just around, even if he isn't able to perform the way that he wants to, at some point before, if they get close to being eliminated at any point during this series, that he's going to have something to say about that, whether it goes down with him or whether he saves it for them. That's just the kind of player he is. He's a transcendent talent. He's a all-time great player, first ballot, absolutely first ballot Hall of Famer. Whether he wins the World Series or not, I mean, his numbers are just up there with any pitcher who's ever pitched in the game. And I think that people oftentimes don't really talk about that. They talk about postseason failures and stuff and forget that he pitched however many, 6 shutout innings before that moment or whatever. They forget that, because in the spectrum of the postseason and in history, people only remember the wins and losses. Sometimes they forget about the guy that lost that pitched 9 solid innings or whatever the case may be, because he got outpitched by another guy that did the same thing on the other side, and that guy's team scraped across a run, or hit a timely home run or had something like that happen. So for the Dodgers' sake, I mean, they definitely have enough pitching, but it's just, I honestly think it's so weird to say this. I think it's going to come down to their hitting in this series. I mean, you would think it's kind of a given, but against this Atlanta Braves team, I think they need to be scoring runs a little bit earlier. They need to get on the board and see, they need to get a run or two early on and just let Atlanta know, hey, we're not going away just because you guys can pitch. If that means we have to manufacture it, whatever that means. I've already heard Justin Turner talk one time this postseason after they won the last series about how, the ballpark that they're playing in right now is not the normal ballpark they're used to, and that balls they would normally hit out are only going to the warning track. And it's like, okay, but now that you know that, you have to make an adjustment. And he said they have talked about that. They have talked about the fact that they need to be playing a little bit more small ball, playing station to station, making sure they're taking the opportunities that are there in front of them. And if they embrace that, because Atlanta is this kind of team that's playing with house money right now, they don't care. If they get to a World Series, it's already beyond expectations for what they probably had this year, even though a lot of teams see them. We see them all coming. But people weren't thinking, oh, well, it's going to be Atlanta this year, no matter how long the season was, no matter how it was affected, right? Everybody saw them coming, but it was like, is it going to be this year? Is it another year or two? Is this the 100% group that this is going to be with, guys going in and out, a lot of one-year deals? Is it going to be this year? And I think that they are proving that, they can do this now. And I think the Dodgers have to be a team a lot like we just saw with another LA team, by the way, the Lakers here. Okay, champions.
Where's your virtual background with the Lakers? Come on.
I can work on that, but it's been faded in and out, so I took it off. But see, what they have to do is a lot like what you just saw Miami being the Atlanta team, right? The young, fiery team that's coming up. And the Lakers said, listen, we appreciate it, and we're going to make our adjustments, but no, it's not this year. And the Dodgers have to come to Atlanta and say, I mean, obviously they're not in Atlanta, but they have to come to the game and say, no, like, we are going to put our foot down and say, we are the experienced team. This is our year. You guys got your couple games or whatever. And if they don't do that, then you got to wonder, because, what other pieces could the Dodgers get? They've got pitching. They finally have at least a solid bullpen. It's not the best bullpen, but it's solid. They've still got a lot of guys in that lineup. I mean, it's as deep as heck. Now you've got Mookie added to that. So if it's not now, then the answer has to be when. And otherwise you become this perennial almost team like the Buffalo Bills, or we've seen other teams in baseball like that for a long time where they just could not break through. The Indians of the 90s were like that, where they just could not get over the hump forever. And then, and the Braves at certain times have been like that, even though they had the best pitching staff for a long time, even though they ended up getting some victories in there and getting some. But it's still, you really got to look at it and go, Dodgers, like, if it's not now, when? And I think it should be now. They need to make it now.
If it's not now, it's probably not going to be in my lifetime. Let me put it that way. I don't know that they've ever had a more solid team with no holes. Nobody has a perfect pitching staff, okay? But the Dodgers come close to having one of the best in baseball. With the lineup they have, with the catchers they have, with the backup hitters they have, with the bench they have, with Betts there. If they don't do it this year, I don't know when it's going to happen. I want to say one last thing about Kershaw before we move on. People forget, you guys probably remember this, in 2017, Dodgers had to beat the Washington Nationals to get to the World Series, play Houston. And Kershaw closed that last game. Remember that? He came in the ninth inning and finished that game off. Yeah, so those are scenarios we could see happening too. But, Benny, if the Dodgers don't win it this year, I don't see them winning again.
In 1988, when they won last, they were a ragtag group of guys. They weren't – there was no star. Kirk Gibson, I guess, was –
They had no business being there.
No business being there, but they had – I think Hershiser was still there.
Mm-hmm.
And they had a couple of other pitchers that, had good seasons and were – but they didn't have a target on their back like they've had, like the Yankees have. And the Yankees are in the same boat as the Dodgers. These are the two premier organizations in baseball. Every other organization has copied one or the other or both in the way that they've set up their scouting, the way that they set up a lot of stuff that the other organizations do.
Right.
And that right there, it sort of puts you at tier one. Like right now, you're a tier one organization, and everybody else is tier two or below, right? So it's like Coke and Pepsi, and then everybody else is going after them. And by the way, Coke and Pepsi's lost a ton of share to like even bottled water, for example. Just the way times have changed. And this is a real thing that happens in life in a lot of different areas, where everyone wants to take down that top team, take them down a peg. And and the Braves, like you said earlier, like they have nothing to lose. Like, what are the Braves? They weren't supposed to even be here. What do they have to lose? Oh, and by the way, they don't have Puig, who they could have had, and the Dodgers don't have Price, who they could have had, and Price probably would have been a pretty good supplement to Kershaw. Not making it this past game. So a lot of speculation is, if they even win this game, and then there's a ring awarded for National League champion, regardless of how the World Series goes, does David Price get a ring? I would think not.
I would think not too.
But it's a player's vote. So
Right.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Does any of this blame lay with Dave Roberts? Because I know if the Dodgers lose, the next day there's going to be tons of people saying Robertson needs to go. That's
what they said about Aaron Boone. They said that about Aaron Boone just recently, after they lost. He's got to go. And Aaron was practically crying because he was so frustrated with how things had been going, just bad luck.
And
I would say that.
we know that in the case of Dave Roberts and the case of Aaron Boone, they both get a ton of their direction from upstairs. Brian Cashman with the Yankees, Andrew Friedman with the Dodgers make a lot of those decisions. So, you know, Roberts, do you cut off the head of the messenger if they lose? I guess that's the way I look at it. He has taken them to the postseason every year he's been the manager there. I think this is his fourth year. They've gone to the World Series twice, and they have a chance this time. So, having said that, I want to go to our first listener question. And in case some listeners hadn't heard, the White Sox fired their manager, Rick Renteria, a couple days ago. And the one thing that struck me about that is that, number one, you know him, Jim. Renteria is a great guy. I thought he was a good manager for that young team they had. He was the first White Sox manager to take them to the postseason in 12 years, and now he gets the axe. Yeah. So let me go to my question, and this is from our listener Patrick Becker in Goodyear, Arizona. Patrick, how you doing? And he says, people keep talking about a 60-game season not being long enough to gauge any type of success or failure, especially when it comes to hitters and their stats. So he's asking, if that's the case for players, why is it not the same for managers and general managers? And I agree with his, what he implies there is it should be the same. If we're going to say that, you know, Christian Yelich had a bad year, it was a 60-game season, he never really got rolling, so we'll just go to next year and let him start over. Why don't we do that with Craig Counsell, their manager? You know, don't blame him for the Brewers losing. How do you guys feel about that?
I got to tell you guys, that Renteria thing really rubbed me the wrong way. So here's what they said. This is based upon where we are as an organization. This is what Han said, the owner, and what we need to do to take the next step in putting the best position to succeed. Okay, here's an idea. Don't sign over-the-hill pitchers to be your ace, okay, because they're over the hill for a reason. There's a reason why Houston was like, oh, we don't need Dallas Keuchel anymore, right? His velocity was starting to go down. He's not the guy that he once was, right? And you guys experienced that a little bit, even though he could still get some guys out for sure. I mean, you know, teams like the Angels probably would love to have a guy like that could at least get some guys out. But at the same time, Renteria took you to the postseason. I mean, he really pushed that division with the Twins and the Indians. They were in a three-way battle the whole
That was a tough division,
season.
Maybe the toughest in baseball. And
it was a crappy division the last couple of years, right? Like it was like the last couple of years, the Indians were like, all right, I guess we'll take the playoff spot. Like we don't really want it, but we'll take it. I mean, it's like, and you're just like, you know, and for the last few years, you're sitting here going, man, this division used to be so competitive with the Indians and these teams in here and the White Sox when they were really good. And, you know, and of course, you know, Lewis used to be there. And they used to have just year after year. And then, of course, Frank Thomas was there for a long time, multiple-time AL MVP as a White Sox. So, I mean, when I was a kid, I had White Sox stuff over my folder just for Frank Thomas, even though I was still an Angels fan, right? Because I just loved watching Frank. I loved watching Junior with the Mariners. Those were two of my favorite guys to watch in baseball. But it's just weird to me that you get a team that achieves something they haven't done in a while, and then you get rid of the manager. I'm like, it's not like you had a couple years of like trying to build and it's not getting anywhere, right? Like that's kind of more like where the Dodgers are if they don't win this year, right? It's kind of like, okay, Roberts, like this isn't moving forward here. We're kind of staying in the same spot, right? And that was the same situation with Mattingly before that, right? And it did work out. And now you see Mattingly doing what he's doing with the Marlins and a younger team that wants to listen to him a little bit more and stuff like that, instead of a lot of guys that are winners that already know and think they know how to win, right? And Roberts is a nicer guy. He's gonna take everybody and get their opinions and try to figure everything out and listen to the analytics. And so it works out so far. I mean, depending on what happens this year for the Dodgers, but Renteria, like, what do you want the guy to do? And they call it mutual decision. Okay, that doesn't mean mutual. That's not what that means. So I don't understand what you're looking for. I think they were only – honestly, if I were the White Sox, I would have went in this offseason going, hey, we're right there. We need, like, a couple pitchers. Like, that's probably it. Our hitters are doing really good things. There's some young guys in that lineup that are scary. That one guy – he's a big dude. I can't remember his name, but he is a big dude. And when he swings that bat, I'm like, whoa, he looks literally like a lumberjack up there. It looks like he's about to chop down a tree. But
that kid Robert,
he needs to learn discipline.
Right?
Yeah. And he needs to learn discipline. And that's the same thing that I see a lot with your boy over there, Aaron Boone, and his club. Like, home runs are not the only way to score. Okay, Yankees, like Padres, like look, we all know that we want to hit home runs, and it's the cool thing to do, and sometimes it really works out. it worked out real well for them against St. Louis, although they almost lost that series before they got hot. So I'll say that was a close call, right? But they eventually got hot and started hitting home runs off the crappy bullpen that St. Louis had, because they weren't really intending on doing anything this year. They have a lot of guys at the end of their contracts. A lot of guys are older. They thought this was the end of it. And I think this year proved to them that it's not the end of it. But now you look at all this stuff and you're like Renteria, I think, should get another job almost immediately, because if you look at what he did in Chicago, I'd be another team that's up and coming, that's looking for a manager right now going, that looks like exactly what we want to be doing next year. So I hope he gets another job. And I know Boone Halstenbrenner did come out and say that Boone is going to be back next year, and that all the people believe in him and all that, which was nice to hear after kind of a crappy, disappointing ending to the season. But you see the polar opposites there. And even though the Yankees have the cachet, even they gave more respect and time to a guy than Renteria got with Chicago.
Yeah, and to Patrick Becker's point, it's a 60-game season. A 60-game season. So if you're going to fire the manager who took you to the playoffs after that, that makes me question ownership, upper management. It makes me question their decision-making process and what their real priorities are and how they treat people, basically.
Yeah, he's originally from Mexico. I played against him down in the Mexican League, and then we were on the Mariners together. And he's a bilingual, which I think nowadays it's almost required, or at least your bench coach should be a bilingual,
at the
coach
least.
At the least. And there's, I think it's 40% or something like that of the players are, from Latin American countries. And so, I thought he was a great fit. A lot of the players that were in their minor league system, coming up, that the younger guys, they were all like Cubans and Dominican kids, and then they had some pretty good arms on the staff. So and that's not his fault. His job is to manage that. Now I don't know if there was like a kind of a cancerous clubhouse environment or a melancholy environment. I do know that Dave Roberts keeps it fun. And I think he's also relying a lot on some veterans like Kershaw and Turner. And like the other day, they had a practice, before the series, and it was Justin Turner running this sort of players meeting, kind of a rah-rah speech thing. And, that's invaluable. That's what we talk about with like the David Freezes of the world and some of these veterans that come in. And the Dodgers have all those ingredients. They have every ingredient that you would expect to be a world champion that we've seen in the past. And look, it's not over yet. But, and by the way, they looked like they were going to just sweep through this thing. This is their first loss, I think, in several games, maybe half a dozen games. It's their first loss yesterday. So you got to look at that in perspective. If you played 1,000 games against major league teams, each played each other 1,000 times, the record is basically going to be there's a range, and it's the same thing every single season. If you win one, automatically win one, you automatically lose one, and it's what you do with that third game is what puts you at 66% or more, or down closer to 33% of wins. It's the same every year, except this year because of the short amount of games, right? So the Dodgers won a disproportionate amount of games in that sort of in that formula. And that's what I expected to see in a short season. I also expected to see someone like A.J. Pollock, who did hit 16 home runs last year, and he hit 16 this year in the shortened season.
Right, led the team,
And if you can imagine what that would extrapolate out to 162 games, I mean, that's a 40-plus season. He's now back on the radar, which he needed to be, I think.
Right. While we're talking about managers, excuse me. Late last night and early this morning, I had messages from 3 different people telling me that I won't mention the team or the manager, telling me that a certain manager had been fired. And like any good journalist in 2020, I didn't bother checking any sources. So I contacted a couple of people. Fortunately, I didn't publish this on social media. But they said, what are you talking about? He didn't get fired, this guy. He's still there. And so I went back and checked some more sources, did what I should have done in the first place. And no, this guy's still there. He's not going anywhere. But that gives you an idea of this swirling talk about different managers. This guy's not going to be there. This guy is going to be there. The messages I got were from fans of a team that wasn't expected to do great this year. And the manager's been there for a couple of years. So, it wasn't like they were saying that Don Mattingly was getting axed. Anyway, when Renteria got let go, I read some of the articles on that from good sources, like in The Athletic and Barry Bloom's writing, people like that. And I saw that Alex Cora and A.J. Hinch's names were mentioned right away, and that surprised me. The first thing is the Red Sox let Renicky go, I think it was last week, or they announced he wasn't going to be back as their manager. And there's all kinds of speculation now that they're opening the door to bring Alex Cora back after his 1-year suspension. And the fact that A.J. Hinch's name even came up for the White Sox job is where I saw that. That shocks me, guys. It does, that they're even being discussed. I thought it would be years and years before they would even be brought up as potential managers. Not weeks after their suspension ends. So I don't know. I would have a hard time if I was a fan of a team who hired one of those two to be a manager. I'd have a hard time rooting them on, number one. And number two, as a member of that organization, whether as a player or a clubhouse guy or an usher, I'd have a hard time with it, thinking, wow, now just the presence of that guy being here is going to taint our organization for a little while. What do you guys think about that?
I think a couple things real quick. First of all, it doesn't surprise me that the Red Sox would be talking about bringing Cora back, because that's the Red Sox for you. I don't agree with it, but hey, the Red Sox think that they are on this level of baseball immortality and whatever, because they've won 3 World Series lately after not winning one for 100 years or whatever. Despite having one of the highest payroll and highest talented teams for like 100 years, they still couldn't get it done until just recently, and then they finally broke the curse. Congratulations. Like, I'm really happy for you, but if you want to run, if you want to condone what happened, still, why did you fire him if you're going to bring him back? Why even fire him? Why even do that?
Point,
why not just,
perfect point.
Why not just have him be suspended for a full season, which, by the way, was only 60 games for him, Lunau, and Hinch, right? It's not like these guys actually were out for a full year. This is only 60 games, and now it's over, right? As soon as the World Series is over, those suspensions are over. They made it very clear that it's not going to be 162 games. It was just for this season, whatever that meant. And but they did, in all honesty, decide that before they knew it was going to be a short season. So it's not like that was, that they came back and said that after the fact or something. But I'm going to say a couple other things about the White Sox. So Ozzie Guillen and Frank Thomas were both legends in the Chicago White Sox. Guillen was the manager when they came back and won in 2005. Of course, Thomas, we talked about, multiple-time MVP with the club. They are both part of the NBC Chicago analyst teams that cover the team. And they were very critical of Renteria's decision-making in a lot of the games at the end of the season and in the postseason. And a lot of people think that Jerry Reinsdorf was watching that, who was the chairman of the White Sox. If you don't know who Jerry Reinsdorf is, he's the guy that told Michael Jordan to go home after he won 3 championships. He said, I'm not keeping Phil Jackson. I don't care what you say. There's nothing you can say. And if you want to retire, then I dare you to go ahead and do it. And Michael Jordan did. He retired. He said, no, I want Phil Jackson. There's no reason to break up this team, right? This is the guy that just made the decision. He informed Hahn that Renteria was gone. It was Reinsdorf again that did this to another Chicago club that had a good manager in place. And look, I'm not saying Renteria's every decision he made was perfect and that it, whatever. He's still a newer manager. He's learning all of that stuff, right? He was a player, but being a player, you see it from a different perspective than you do as a manager and as a GM, as you know, Jim, right? So like there are times where you're going to make mistakes and you're going to learn from those mistakes. But again, this is Jerry Reinsdorf making a silly decision in the moment, listening to probably those guys who aren't currently involved with the club. Yes, they're legends and stuff. And then what's really funny is then they came out and said, oh, well, now it's open and we're going to, anybody that has a championship caliber resume, and immediately we're going to consider for the managerial position that Renteria just got vacated from mutually. So now, and then they came out and said, everybody but Ozzie Guillen. They literally said everybody but Ozzie Guillen. The only guy who's ever won a title since the dawn of 2000 with us, right? We're not going to consider him, but anybody else. So are you about championships? And I mean, I know Guillen's made his own mistakes with, whether it be verbally or in games and stuff with the Marlins, made some comments that weren't real popular.
But there was no reason. That was like a personal slap in the face to him. There was no reason for that at all.
But But Reinsdorf's like, what are you doing? Like, you're getting rid of a manager for what? Like, what is your plan here? And this is the same crap that happened to the Bulls. What is your plan? Now, they didn't just come off winning a bunch of titles like the Bulls did, but they seem like they're an emerging club. They obviously made some good signings. Grandal went there. I mean, Keuchel went there. They got some other free agents to go there, Encarnacion and some other guys to go there. Abreu came back when it looked like he was going to leave. They put this together, and now it's like, for what? Like, I don't understand what they're trying to accomplish, and it just drives me crazy when I look at this, and especially knowing that Reinsdorf is involved. I'm just like, that is the worst thing that could happen to a club, honestly.
Yeah, Jim, what do you think?
Well, and again, I think I've heard Tony La Russa's in the mix for this job too. And
What?
Yeah, I heard that on several sources, and apparently he's going to go out and see him. He's currently, I think, employed by the Angels, right, Benny? I think he's a senior advisor.
He's helping find our GM right now.
Yeah.
Isn't Tony La Russa like 85 years old?
Well,
76.
he's 1 year. My dad's 77, and they were roommates with the Pirates, so they were the same age. But he has experience, in sort of rebuilding teams like this, and I think that's why he's being looked at. But man, it just seems really odd that would be an option. I mean, it almost seems like if you're going to look at this team of young guys, you got to bring in someone like that they've seen play, perhaps even someone that they've the players have kind of grown up and seen. I think that's one of the
other Chicago team, the Cubs did with David Ross.
That's right. And these young guys are I think they kind of look at that like, oh, you're an old timer. You didn't have analytics when you played. You don't know crap because you're old. And I would be considered old too. And Renteria is a little bit older than me. So, you wonder if there's a little bit of issues with, his analytics, either skills or his feeling with analytics. Because I think there's always this sort of like age where, some guys are with it, some guys aren't with it. But again, it's tough. That is a pretty coveted, job, the White Sox, manager.
Right.
And again, you can't change crazy. And obviously the owner has a little bit of a crazy nut in him there, and has a power trip, it seems like. So we'll see how this all plays out. But I really got a feeling that, the right choice is maybe someone who we've not even talked about yet. Someone who's much less famous, much more of a, maybe an organizational guy who all the players know and respect. And that could be a better choice than a younger guy who maybe speaks, Spanish. There could be a better choice than, going after someone who's, been there, done that, and has already sort of his ways set, Anyway, I just kind of feel like I think we're not going to find out about who's the manager is. They're not allowed to announce new hires. There's like a freeze coming up, and I think we're in that freeze either now or the World Series. So even if they decide to hire someone, it can't be publicized until the World Series is over. So we're not going to know this until November. But nonetheless, it'll be interesting to see how this plays out.
Well, I think the trend we've seen the last couple of years in hiring new managers is like the Giants hiring Gabe Kapler. Younger guy, not that long ago was a player. Who am I thinking? Oh, Rocco Baldelli of the Twins, another guy, younger guy who was a player not that long ago. And I think they relate a lot better to the guys on the field. Although Kapler had some issues with Brandon Crawford, and I'm curious to see.
Well, more than him, I think too. I think it was a lot deeper than we were led to believe. And that's another example of a guy who is still a really good player, but he ain't going to be in San Francisco next year, I don't think. So.
No, I'm pretty sure. Like you said, there's a freeze on everything right now, and there won't be any trades or free agents announced till after the World Series. But I have a very strong feeling Crawford will be ejecting out of San Francisco soon. And there were some problems there, but it's a young team, and I was constantly impressed by the Giants this year as they move forward. And I am not a Giants fan, as you guys know.
You're a Yaz fan, though. You're a Yaz fan.
Well, I wasn't going to mention it, but they do have potential MVP in Mike Yastrzemski there. And so as he continues to play and some of the players develop around him, then I think they have a good shot. However, if they have issues with the manager that are personal issues, which is what it seems to be with Crawford, then that can be a huge factor. That can make the difference between winning and losing. So, it's going to be interesting to see there who the White Sox end up picking. Could be one of their minor league managers. It could be somebody we haven't even thought of. I'm hoping that Tony La Russa is allowed to enjoy his continued retirement and stay in Florida or wherever he is. I would be shocked if they brought him back as a manager. And knowing Tony, you know him, Jim, he might do it for ego's sake. I don't know. But it'll be interesting. There'll be some manager openings. I know the Tigers, Ron Gardner are retired. And that was for health reasons, I think. And he's been a manager for a long time, very well liked by the players. And he would have been around next year, even though they had a bad season. The Tigers are starting to put together a core of players and doing well in the drafts. That they'll have a good team before all that long. So they have a managerial opening there. So we'll see what else happens manager-wise. What's up next, Benny?
Well, we've got the top 5 right now. Atlanta's now up 3-0 with 2 men on in the top of the 5th with Freddie Freeman batting. So we'll see how that turns out.
Baez is pitching now.
Okay, I was just going to say who's in there now for the Dodgers. Baez. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, Pedro Baez pitching.
He's only throwing his second pitch. It's only a second pitch, so he's 1-1 to the batter.
Well, and again, what we talked about, 3-run lead now the Braves have. 3 runs should not beat the Dodgers. So if they don't score, it's on them, It's on them. So let me go to my second listener question of the day. And this one is from Carl in Los Angeles. And he has an interesting question. I don't know that we've ever talked about it because I don't know that it's a possibility. But it does bear discussion a little bit, I think. All right, and Carl is asking, with the League Championship Series, the National League Championship Series, and then the World Series being played at Globe Life Park in Arlington, Texas, do we, meaning the 3 of us, think that, like the Super Bowl, future World Series should be played at a neutral site? And do we think it's a good idea? Let me just say that they determine every year where the Super Bowl is going to be played well in advance, a couple of years in advance, so that city can put together a plan and get a lot of revenue. You can't do that in baseball because, yes, it's at Arlington this year, but what if in January the commissioner's office announces, well, the World Series this year is going to be played in Kansas City? What if the Royals go out and win and they end up in that World Series? Then it isn't a neutral site anymore. I like the way it is right now, where the 2 teams get to the World Series. Their home fans get to see at least 3 games at their stadium. Having said that, I've heard a lot of support for this question that Carl has. A lot of support for playing the World Series in a neutral site, and a lot of people like how they did it this year in the neutral sites. But it's a weird year. Until now, there were no fans. There were cardboard cutouts up there. I think this is going to be something when we look back on 2020, we'll probably say, oh, yeah, that was the year they played the World Series in Texas because of COVID and all that. But that's my opinion. What do you guys think?
I think, by the way, it's not 4-0. But
you're killing me, Benny. You're killing me. If the Dodgers,
I'm sorry. It's a baseball show, Eric. This is a baseball show.
If the Dodgers don't score, I don't want to hear anymore. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
All right. Okay. All right. 4-0. Top 5. No, but I think that, so in football, as you were talking about, drawing the parallel there, a team could get a home Super Bowl if they were the team that was already determined to host and they happened to get to the Super Bowl. It's almost happened a couple of times, but it's never actually gotten all the way down to the finish line. I think a couple of times there were teams in the championship game that could have gotten there that lost.
Right.
So definitely it could happen even then.
Well, wait. I saw the Rams at the Rose Bowl in the Super Bowl. Even though that's not their home stadium, it's their hometown.
Yeah, so I mean that's a good example. So I mean, yeah, it can happen. And it's only one game in football too, which is even more unfair, really, if you think about it. But I mean, these teams play for home field advantage, and I'm so glad they got rid of that All-Star game determining it thing, because you have a 0.5% of the players playing in that game that gets to determine that for the entire leagues. Like
I
I've never
never
liked
liked
that.
that rule. I never liked that rule. Glad it's gone.
No, it's not. It's not a good rule, and I'm glad they got rid of that. But I think these teams play to have this advantage. So, a team like the Dodgers, if they had played a full season and kept it going like this, when they're not having the bases loaded against them like they are right now, then they would be able to get that home field advantage. They would be able to get that home field advantage that they earned in the postseason, and we wouldn't see these little. Of course, these little. This year's kind of a weird one, but these teams earn this with their record, with winning their divisions, and with winning their respective leagues. So, I mean, their respective leagues. So, I mean, I think that they should play wherever it should be, and you get 4 games at home if you're the team that has the advantage. So,
Right.
I think that's what it should be.
I agree too, and that to me is for obvious reasons they did this sort of bubble thing, which is required. I mean, recommended and required right now. But maybe this is not a news flash, but guess what? Like COVID's not going to go away for another year or so, and even then, like the vaccines are going to have to be, and people are still going to have to wear masks. Like I just saw a TV documentary thing, like a little news snippet, like a 20-minute thing, and it was from the United Airlines CEO, who's sort of super dialed into the COVID thing, and he's like, we are prepared to stay in COVID guideline mode until 2024. So I highly anticipate next year there's going to be a whole bunch of residual effects of COVID, whether it's a shortened season, whether it's a bubble type of a thing, whether everybody plays in their time zones like they did this year. I really feel that spring it's right upon us. Things aren't changing, but it's not going to change dramatically by then. So I kind of have a feeling that this is almost a dress rehearsal for the next season or two, where we're going to have to sort of continue to deal with. Now, it's called a pandemic right now. When it's isolated in a certain area, it's called an epidemic. And then when it's not a pandemic anymore and it's not an epidemic, it becomes endemic. And so you can still get malaria, which is an endemic disease. You can take all the pills you want for it. You can do all the precautions, and you can still get malaria if you're in certain parts of the world. And the flu is endemic. It's just these are always going to be in nature, and you can get it, and it can kill you. Okay,
Right.
That is it's a new normal for everybody, and especially sports. So again, there's a strong feeling that I have that we're not going to see fans again next year. But I think they might be able to squeeze in the season, but they're going to probably have to take additional precautions. And, God save us if something gets crazy after the election, but I mean, again, I just have a strong feeling that there's just too much at stake,
Right.
for just to say we're going back to normal. It's 2019 again. I can't see that happening.
Well, that leads me to another question. Smitty in Prescott, Arizona.
Prescott.
Yeah. Smitty is asking us this very question. Is there going to be a spring training next year? Well, yeah, there'll be a spring training. This is still him talking. There will be a spring training, but are they going to have it where all the games are played like at Chase Field in Phoenix, and they have to have this round robin schedule like they talked about this year? I have people I listen to who know, like I have a doctor in my family, as you know, Jim, who stays on top of all these things. And he's been telling me not to prepare for anything to go back to normal for a couple of years, at least a year from now. But as you called it, the new normal for us, the way we do everything now, wearing masks and, seeing cutout cardboards at ball games, that's become the new normal. And I think, to answer Smitty's question, I don't think we're going to have a regular spring training next year. There has to be one so the players get prepared for the season, but how they're going to do it, I don't know yet.
Right. And now most in Arizona, I think there's some in Florida where the one team is still at one site. But in Arizona, almost every team, I think maybe other than the Angels have Tempe Diablo to themselves. But almost every other site, it's a 2-team, and they share the main stadium, and then they have their side fields. By the way, I'm playing in the 50 and over World Series next week, and our first game's at Tempe Diablo stadium, like on the major league field.
Yeah.
So I haven't been on that field since '92 or something like that. But my point is then we're going to like Red Mountain. We're going to Peoria for 2 games. Salt River, right? That's one of them.
Yeah. Salt River Fields. Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to that one for a doubleheader. And this is what the minor league guys do. This is what the major league guys do. What I'm concerned about more than anything is they have to figure out a way to play minor league season next year. These kids sat out a whole 142 game season. There only a few of them were elected to go to the taxi squads, and
Right.
the rest of them are driving their bonus mobiles for Lyft cars, to make money on driving Lyfts around and
Yeah.
Ubers. So that's another concern, and those kids are not progressing. They're not getting better. Right now, Instructional League just started over in Arizona, and I have a couple of kids that I know and pro kids who are, playing for their organization's Instructional League, and
Right.
they are playing pretty close to normal baseball. However, I don't believe fans are allowed to go to those games either. But
No, in fact, I live 3/4 of a mile away, walking distance from Peoria Stadium. I'm allowed to go in there because they know me there. But the gates were closed. I had to go through a special gate just to go and watch some of these guys play. So, yeah, no fans are being allowed. Not that there was ever any huge turnout for the Instructional League, but it points to what we're going to see in the future. I think, hey, Jim, there's one thing you might want to think about for this 15 over World Series you're going to be in. You're going to be playing Tempe Diablo. You played there as a professional player when you were in spring training. Maybe you can find Rufus from Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure to get that phone booth and shoot you back to 1992.
Well, or bring Ty Cobb into 2020 and see how he can do with a 50 and over.
Oh.
I had to get my Ty Cobb in, but
yeah.
Well, and then if Kershaw can't pitch this series, you guys could just throw Rick Rhoden in there and you'll be fine. I mean,
there you go.
World Series experience.
Hey, Rick Rhoden would want to play golf in Phoenix the whole time he was here. He wouldn't want to throw it all, so forget it.
Did you ever play with Rick?
My dad has played a lot of golf with him. Yeah, and he said he's like practically a pro.
That's what I've heard. Yeah.
Yeah, he's scratch golfer, below par. And he had like a weird knee thing where he's like his knee always was like kind of inside his foot. He even walked like that. And that's like exactly the perfect golf swing. Like you want to have your knee inside your foot when you go back and swing. And so he actually used it to push off his back foot. So he was kind of meant to golf and pitch. God said you're a golfer and you're a pitcher. So
right. He was a member of the Dodgers in '77 and '78 when they lost 2 years in a row to the Yankees in the series. And one of those years, 1978, the Dodgers took a commanding 2-0 lead, and then lost 4 in a row to the Yankees. So things can happen. Things can turn around. I remember that particular series because it was the series when Bobby Welch exploded onto the national scene. We knew about him already, but that World Series matchup where he struck out Reggie Jackson happened in '78 in Game 2, I believe. And then the Dodgers went on and lost. So things can happen. Things can turn around, really fast. If the Dodgers bats come alive, watch what happens. It won't be just for 3 or 4 runs. They'll score 9 runs, 11 runs, that type of thing, even against the Braves pitching. They did it all year long. Yeah.
Well, I was just going to say, in '81, that's when Winfield was on the team for the Yankees.
Mm-hmm.
And I was the left field line ball boy for the home games at that series. And the Dodgers were down, I think it was 2-0 in that series, and came back and won 4. So
that's right.
It's happened before. It'll happen again, and they might have to do it so far again this year because now it's 6-0, Eric. Sorry, but
all right, I'm gonna check out. I got places to go. I'll see you guys.
Just go in the refrigerator. Go in the refrigerator behind you. Pull out some shots. You'll feel better.
Well, and I've got one for you guys that's pretty interesting because we've been talking about this last couple of weeks, and of course, Eric, it had to do with your interview, potential interview that didn't happen with Zach Greinke that we talked about, and another question about last week, right? So Zach Greinke came out today, and I think it was today or yesterday, and said that he absolutely does not miss fans. He said, I don't really notice fans when the game's going on, but warming up and practice before games, I mean, for me, it's nice not having fans in the stands. Most people like it. When the game comes on, it's the same for me, because then there's no one here to talk to you and ask for autographs and want pictures and all that stuff. I don't like to do that stuff. It's not nice having them for me. Most people like it. I don't like it. So to me, that says a lot about what happened with that interview, bud.
Yeah.
Well,
he has a social anxiety, condition. And I mean,
yeah.
that's to be expected. He doesn't like to interact. That's not his makeup.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Javi Baez had a terrible year because he feeds off the energy of the crowd.
That's right.
And
right.
he had a terrible season. It was almost like he didn't have anybody to prop him up, when he sucked. And the crowd would help him get back to normal. I think that he's like that kind of, energy sucker.
Greinke, at one point, it got so bad he missed the whole season because of that disorder.
Yeah.
Now, knowing that and knowing how a lot of fans are, I can understand why he's saying he prefers no fans before the games. Because, they've got to be relentless, taunting him and saying all kinds of things, which I got to say, as a player, if I was a hitter against him, I would do that from the dugout. But that's on the field, and he has the right to drill me when I come up to bat if I do that. So, and regarding that interview, just real quick, I knew about his disorder. And so when they came and told me, hey, because it was only 30 minutes away, we were all set up. When they told me, look, Zach says he's not going to do it. It's not going to happen today. I might have mentioned this to you before, Jim. I didn't take it personal. I was like, okay, all right, he's having one of those days. He doesn't want to do it. I'll get him another time. Go find me somebody else to talk to today. And that was that. But I know for a fact, because I've heard from them, there are writers who had that same or a similar situation happen, and they still hold it against him, personally, he offended them personally. Zach Greinke doesn't know me. He didn't do that because it was me. He would have done it to anybody. And those are the guys that are going to keep him from getting in the Hall of Fame if he's deserving when his career is over. I guarantee you that.
So this is about 5 years out of me playing baseball, maybe 7 years. And I'm in Anaheim, and it's the Anaheim playoffs in the 2002 where they won the World Series, or maybe it was even a little bit. I'm trying to remember the timeline. But,
no, they won the World Series. Yeah, they won the World Series.
Well, I know that, but there was a player, and his name was Sean Figgins. Do you remember Sean Figgins?
I remember him well. Yeah,
getting biggie with it.
Yeah,
for the Mariners also.
What year would he have been on the Angels?
Probably 2001 or 2.
He was 3. Up until 2008 or 9.
Yeah.
Okay. He came through the Arizona Fall League. I remember him there.
Okay, so I'm with my brother-in-law who was drunk as hell, and we're at an Angel game, and they were his tickets, and they were good tickets, and he invited me, and it was a playoff game, and he takes me up close, and I get up close, and I'm standing there, and I'm actually looking for some of the people in the dugout that I know to yell their name or yell their nickname. And then my brother-in-law yells out, "Hey, Choney! Hey, Choney!" How does he spell his name, Betty?
Chone.
C-H-O-N-E. Yeah.
C-H.
And don't tell me that the players don't listen. And he starts screaming back at him. It's Sean! Sean! He's screaming back at my brother-in-law. And I'm like, dude, come on, let's get out of here. You're embarrassing me. But don't tell me. I know we listen. I know when I was on deck and somebody yelled something at me, I heard it. I pretended I didn't. And I don't care who they are, what player says they don't hear it. They're liars. They hear it, and they hear it every word. You can try to, sort of, put the silent ears on it. Sometimes if you're in the middle of the action, things sort of fade away and you're focusing on the ball. But once that action's over, the sound comes back and you hear everybody.
Well, so, the fans don't realize this, but they may be helping the opponent, because I've had players tell me they take the insults and the things the fans say and the cursing. They take that and use it. Okay, well, watch what I do now if that's what you think.
Campanis, your grandpa's a bigot. Oh, I love that one. I crushed every time I heard that one. Man, it brought something out inside of me, something deep. It was almost primal, and it was more simple. Made things simple. I used anger instead of
You told me to get something out of my refrigerator. That's a Starbucks coffee drink.
Oh,
So
right.
anyone
Good
watching
work.
doesn't think I'm sitting here doing my job while I'm having a beer. But anyway, back to the players.
Put some Baileys in it. We'll never know.
Sean Figgins, just real quick, was one of those guys who signed a big free agent contract to play for the Mariners and went there and tanked. And he's one of a long list of guys that have done that. I don't know what happens to those guys. You can go down the line. Rich Aurelia was one. People don't even remember his name now, but he had a couple great years with the Giants, went to Seattle and hit 150 or something. Even a friend of ours, Jim, had many years in the majors with the Rockies, and he played for the Brewers too. Went to Seattle and just for whatever reason did not do well there. And he got out of there, luckily for him, and he came back and had a good year the next year with another team. But I don't know what it is about signing with the Mariners.
Well, they didn't really have their organizational, structure, Jim, as you know, real well until more recently. So I think, even Figgy and stuff. I mean, Mike Scioscia knew how to use Sean Figgins in situational spots, and I think that the Angels let him go because they realized that he wasn't too useful for that anymore, and he ended up getting a deal with somebody like Seattle. And I think probably the same for Aurelia. There's a lot of guys that have, like you said, that have that long history of going to Seattle, and obviously King Griffey Jr. was not one of them that failed. So.
Well, I will tell you, when I went to Seattle, the first thing when I got there, like the first day, one of the coaches came up to me and he's like, "Hey, you grew up in the Dodger organization, didn't you?" I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "This ain't the Dodgers." I'm like, "What? Wait, what?" I go, I can tell by our locker room it's not the Dodgers. Okay, I can tell you right. And I can tell you about the lunch spread right now. This Subway sandwich lunch spread we got, that ain't Dodgers either. Okay. And it was like over it. Like, hey, look at our bats. Our bats are crap compared to everybody else's. They just like bought the worst wood. We had to have our own catcher's gear because like they just didn't have any. Their organizational catcher's gear was terrible. So
Wow.
if you didn't have a contract, you just go to Big Five and buy your own gear. Like that's how they rolled.
Oh,
And,
man.
I mean, any way you could skimp on something, they skimped on it. And they hired a nutritionist, which was an amazing thing. Maybe she did it for free just to put on a resume. So we have a nutritionist come in, and all 150 guys in spring training go into this conference room. And she starts giving us a lecture on what we should eat and how we should eat and how we should eat on the road. And when we get, it's 2 a.m. and the only thing open is a fast food place. Like, this is what you should order. And then she starts going into, okay, now when it gets super hot, the worst thing that you can do is eat soup. And we all start laughing. She's like, "What are you guys laughing at?" And we're like, "Lady, it's 120 out and they're feeding us soup for lunch here in spring training. Like, why don't you go to one of our and see what we actually are being fed? Peanut butter, crackers, and chicken noodle soup. That's the minor league lunch."
Oh,
and
man.
we're supposed to perform on that. And she was mortified. And that is what the Mariner organization was like. Now, again, I think it's improved greatly. And when they moved to Peoria, I think that started to change their perception of being a more top tier team.
Right.
But I'll tell you, man, that guy was right that first day. This ain't the Dodgers. And again, there was a point in time, and this is like in the 50s or 60s, where 25% of every major league player had been a Dodger at one point. 25%.
I remember that.
So that tells a lot about player development, their ability to keep guys that they wanted and let guys go, and then those guys went on to have good careers. And the Yankees have the very similar history of being a top tier.
Right.
We talked about this earlier, and it trickles all the way down to what you're having for lunch. So when I went to Dodgers Camelback Ranch, this is a few years ago, we sat down and we had a lunch before the team came in to eat, and I thought we were in the major league cafeteria. And then all these minor leaguers came in, and I'm like, "What are they doing here?" And they're like, "Oh no, this is the minor league." And there's a guy with the chef has the big hat, and the roast beef, and they're having roast beef for lunch, like what I mean, like it's a 4-star hotel, and all this salad bar, like a Sizzler salad bar thing. It was total first class, and these kids had like all the juices in the world, all the Gatorades in the world, just kind of get it whatever you want. At Mariners, we had water mixed with ice. in a Gatorade bucket, you know, and guys would stick their hands in and pull ice out like while you're drinking that. Again, it just Rod Data at USC had this saying. It's like it only costs a dime more to go first class. Well,
Right.
maybe a little bit more than that, but you know what? That said a lot about how he ran USC's program for all those years and why, you know, it was very prolific, and still we're trying to get that back. But he's the one who sort of set that bar so high. And he had gone through the Dodger, you know, as a minor leaguer. So
Yeah.
kind of learned how he should, you know, replicate his college program to that of how the Dodgers did it. So, you know, again, every player wants to be a Dodger. Every player wants to be a Yankee. And so when you get there and now you're got a target on your back, now it's 6-0 in the fifth inning in game 2 of the NLCS.
Let me just add in for our list. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, just because they have a target on their back and the Braves have nothing to lose.
Yeah. I just want to mention for our listeners, by the time I got to the Mariners, which was spring of 1999, they were doing everything first class. What you've described, I used to hear about from employees who had been there for many years, but like the equipment guy, George, I think his first name was. You remember
Henry.
him?
Was it Henry?
Henry, yeah.
The big league guy, yeah.
Yeah. Henry had been there forever, and I got to know him pretty well. And he used to tell me what it was like before. And but by the time I got there, you know, A-Rod was already there, Ken Griffey Jr. was there, and then Ichiro signed shortly after I joined the team. They just did everything. And I remember being in meetings where they'd be planning how we were going to do certain things during spring training. And it was often reinforced. No, we don't do it that. We're the Seattle Mariners. We're a 21st century team, and we're going to be doing this the right way. So that was the message we were getting, you know, working in the booth and working around the club. And it was like, I mean, they used to feed us lunch. They used to bring us lunch up to the booth. And it wasn't just a hot dog and a Coke either. It was good stuff. So they do things better now. Listeners, just so you know. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think I was on the team the first year they moved to Peoria. Tempe Diablo was a rundown rat hole, by the way, when we were there.
Yeah.
Terrible. And then I think it went vacant for a year, and then the Angels stepped in and took it. I think they were still in Palm Springs and got tired of that, so they spent some money and fixed it up. And then they came back and Tempe Diablo, but they kept their Mesa minor league facility, which is really good. So the minor leaguers were in Mesa, and then the big leaguers were in Tempe Diablo. Well, we were on the lower fields at Tempe Diablo in a locker room that's about as big as this office that I'm in right now.
Right.
And we have to share lockers with guys until the first or second cuts came through, because there weren't enough lockers. There weren't enough towels. There wasn't enough soap. I mean, just simple stuff, you know.
Right.
It was embarrassing, quite honestly. I mean, like I remember, like, I'm like, my college facilities are better than this. What's going on here? You know?
Yeah. And it's hard to imagine an organization today being that way at all, with the way Major League Baseball is run today and the money they're making today.
Right.
Well, I haven't heard any stories like that.
No, and the game changer was those cable TV. The Yankees got the cable TV deal first. If you live in New York City and you have cable, Channel 1 is YES, the Yankees Entertainment whatever system.
Right.
It's Channel 1, for God's sake, like Channel 1. You know, it's not Channel 675, like, you know, what it is for Spectrum or something here.
Yeah.
So when they got that deal, they got a boatload of money, just like the Dodgers, you know, sold for $2 billion because they had that cable deal locked up.
Right. Right.
Two quick things real quick. I want to send best wishes to Tommy Pham, who was stabbed in San Diego.
What?
Coming out of this is a real story. You can find it actually on ESPN.com right now.
Holy cow!
When did this happen?
Outfielder, former Tampa Bay Ray, traded, is recovering in good condition after he was stabbed during an altercation Sunday night in San Diego. Both Pham and the Padres confirmed the news to the San Diego Union Tribune. And cited two people who talked to the veteran big leaguer. The newspaper reported Monday that Pham left an establishment, saw two people whom he didn't know arguing by his car, and eventually asked them to move out of the way. Pham was stabbed in the lower back. The newspaper reported no major organs were hit and stitches were needed to sew up the wound. The San Diego Police Department told the newspaper that the stabbing occurred shortly after 10:30 p.m. Pacific time outside the Pacers Showgirls International Gentlemen's Club Police are still investigating the incident, and the attackers remain at large. He thanked the medical staff at the at the UC San Diego Health Center, which is where they took care of him. But obviously, when you're out late at a gentleman's club, that's probably problem number one. But I mean, you never want to get stabbed, and of course, that's horrible. So hopefully Tommy gets well quickly. It sounds like he's on the road to recovery already, and that nothing major happened. And then, of course, the other sad thing, we could not be a baseball show and not talk about the passing of Joe Morgan.
Yes,
Yeah.
I'm glad you brought that up. I was going to say something if you guys didn't. I had just one real quick observation. All the plaudits you can name for him are not enough for what he did on the field during his career and off the field too. Just recently, I was rereading Ball 4, Jim Bouton's book from the 1969 season when he played for the Seattle Pilots. And if you remember, late in the year, like at the trade deadline in August, he got traded to the Houston Astros and suddenly found himself in the middle of a pennant race. And he talks about in the book what a difference it was. But Tommy Davis was there actually too. And Tommy Davis started the year with the Pilots and also got traded to the Astros. But they were talking about Joe Morgan. And I believe this before he got dealt to the Reds 2 years later. Joe Morgan, when he played for the Astros, had a roommate named Doug Rader. I don't know if you guys remember that name.
Yeah.
Third baseman. Yeah.
Yeah. He became a coach or manager.
Yeah, he sure did. It became a big deal at the time because Doug Rader was white and Joe Morgan was African American. And they went to management. They had to get permission to room together. That's what a big deal that was at that time. But I also remember reading that back when the book came out in 1970, reading that and thinking, well, I know that Al Campanis roomed with Jackie Robinson in the minor leagues in 1946. So here we are. At that time, it was, 24 years later, and it was still an issue. And now it is 50 years since that book came out. And we still have different issues going on. Luckily, that's not one of them. But yeah, Joe Morgan, one of the greats of all time. You could make a case that that Big Red Machine team really didn't become complete until they completed the trade with the Astros and got him from Houston. So yeah, sad to see Joe go.
I will say that the Dodgers had this infield, the Say, Russell, Lopes, and Garvey. But my grandpa was the GM at the time, and he had orchestrated these guys. They were all drafted by the Dodgers, came up together, played AA, AAA together, and they literally just took over the team. When they broke, and they had an 11-year run.
Right.
Well, it was about the 10th year or 9th year of that run, and the Dodgers had an opportunity to sign Joe Morgan. And then they had an opportunity to trade Davey Lopes and open that spot. And so my grandpa went through and orchestrated the trade. And now he had made, at that point, dozens of trades and never once did he even have to ask the O'Malleys if it was okay. In this case, the O'Malleys heard about the trade being in the works and came in and respectively, they said to him, look, we know you're doing a great job, but we don't want you to break up the infield. So we're gonna deny the trade. So it's not gonna happen. And my grandpa was a little disappointed. He thought that would be a perfect, fit for the team that year. So Joe Morgan ends up signing with the Giants. And Eric, what did he do at the last game of that year? Do you remember?
Hit a home run to knock the Dodgers, a walk-off home run to knock the Dodgers out of the
That's
playoffs.
right.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. So, it's funny how, that was the one trade out of the dozens and dozens that he had made. It was, his nickname was Trader Al. He traded his own son, for God's sake.
Yeah.
And, and that was the one that was denied. So I always remembered that story primarily. And then when Joe was an announcer, he would be up in the press box at Dodger Stadium, at the third level, just like it is now. But now they have suites around it. Before they had more press box area. And my grandpa's box is right next to Vin Scully. And then like ESPN would be 2 more boxes down. Right. So when you go in and you eat in the press box up there, everybody goes in the same area. And then I'd go with my grandpa and oh, hey, Joe, how you doing? And they would start talking and there was no, ill feelings or anything. In fact, I thought Joe Morgan really liked my grandpa and they had a very cordial relationship. But about the extent that I got to meet him and know him a little bit was as an announcer versus, as a player.
Right.
Although, of course, I saw him on the field when I was younger, with the Reds. I don't remember him with Houston. I don't believe I had a chance to really see him. I was a little too young and traveling to play. My dad was playing ball at that time, but baseball lost not just a great player, a very unique player, switch hitter, a really small in stature guy with a huge, with tons of power.
Yeah.
That's another thing that makes baseball so great amongst other sports is you don't have to be 6'8". You don't have to weigh 300 pounds. You don't have to be able to, jump, have a 44, inch vertical. You can be a really Hall of Fame level player by just doing a couple of things really well. Like he could field. Did you remember he had a glove? I think my hand's bigger than his glove. He had the smallest.
Yeah, it was
glove.
a tiny little thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Tiny little glove.
But he liked that, and he would talk to my grandpa about turning the double play because my grandpa was the second baseman. So that was almost every time they would talk, there'd be some mention of second base, and that's what Joe would say. I love that little small glove because I could get it in and get it out. And then when I went to catch, I found that the smaller catcher's glove suited me better than the bigger one. For the same reason, you got to get it out and get it to second or get it to third. So just being a fly on the wall in those conversations that my grandpa and my dad would have with these legends, I listened intently. I wasn't looking. I didn't have a phone obviously back then, but nowadays these kids will be looking at their phone while their dad's talking to one of the greatest players that ever played. Not me. I was all into whatever they had to say, and I wanted to hear it from a different perspective. Some of these, the way that everybody plays the game differently. I always like to hear how people played or thought differently. And we all remember Joe Morgan's little thing with his elbow, right?
Yeah, he was left-handed, so it was
Well, but he was switch hitter though. He did it.
Oh, that's right. He did it both ways. Yeah.
Yeah, but he did it more. He did it more. Yeah, he did it more left-handed, and I found out why is because he wanted to remind himself to get it because that's what you do when you hit you slam that elbow into your side so your hands get out.
Right.
And that's what that was reminding him was like, okay, get your hands out, So
a lot of people don't realize this, but those big red machine teams that were so dominating there during the 70s, they won back-to-back World Series in 75 and 76. Joe Morgan was the National League Most Valuable Player both those years.
Wow.
So, out of all those great players on that team, he was the MVP 2 years in a row. So
well, and this is a team with Johnny Bench, right? Tony Perez,
Pete Rose.
Pete Rose, that's right.
I mean, Davey Concepcion was a
Johnny
pretty good
Bench.
player.
Johnny Bench actually said
George Foster.
Johnny Bench actually said that Morgan was the best player he ever saw, and I think that was actually back then that he said it. And they also went to the World Series the first year they got him in '72 and didn't win, so they actually went 3 times. And I know that Dusty Baker was actually commenting, who of course was one of his competitors, with the Dodgers and stuff, and said he meant a lot to us. He meant a lot to me, a lot to baseball, a lot to African Americans around the country, a lot to players that were considered undersized. He was one of the first examples of speed and power for a guy that was too small to play. 271 career hitter, and the Reds said that they are just completely heartbroken as an organization because Joe, obviously, if you ever watch Sunday Night Baseball, he was on there for a long time too, just amazing. It's funny to me, like people say what they want about A-Rod or whoever, but these guys that are like these legendary hitters just see things that are so interesting when they're announcing. They just see things that you just wouldn't think about as a fan or whatever. And I know, like, you guys being former players, you probably pick up on that stuff more than I do. But when I watch and I hear, even like Angels broadcasts, I'll hear Mark Gubicza talk about things that the pitcher's going through that I would have never thought in a million years because he was a pitcher, right? And he talks about that kind of stuff, and it's still, and even like when Rex Hudler was, he would talk to like about the hitter and what he's really trying to do when he does this and what he's trying to do when he does that. And it's just amazing. And Joe Morgan had some of the most amazing insight as a broadcaster. I mean, he would just be like, oh, yeah, well, it's just, he's just trying to do this. And it's like, to him, it's like, oh, yeah, well, duh, that's what he's trying to do. And the rest of us are just going, oh, it's just amazing to just hear that. And it's just straight up experience and wisdom. That's all it is,
Yeah. And observation.
Well, I saw that. So like from a player's perspective, the kid Rosal who hit the home run off of Chapman to propel the Devil Rays or the Rays, into the next round.
Right.
And I saw this happening, and I didn't have the sound on, and then I had the sound. I turned the sound back on, and I think it was Smoltzy who said he finally got the timing, and that's what I saw too. He had fouled off 2 good pitches, good high fastballs, and now like throw him another one, and he just got his bat out just a little bit more and caused that launch angle, which is really the point of contact out in front of your front foot. And that made all the difference in getting the ball in the air at 100 and whatever 4 miles an hour it was. But that was again one of those, like, if you're a player, he cheated on that third one. He said, I'm all in for this. If he throws me a slider, I'm out, but I'm gonna catch this fastball. And they showed in replay on that one where last year he threw all sliders to Altuve and gave up the big home run to Altuve on a slider. And then this year against Purcell, he threw everything was a fastball. And I'll tell you what, you throw me a fastball 10 times. My dad went to the ages.
Uh-oh.
Did I lose you guys?
Sorry.
Sorry.
There you are. Okay.
I put my dad. I was hitting in the 90s, which is more like 75, not 90. But I was hitting. I'm trying to get ready for the 50 and over World Series thing, and he goes, "Let me take a couple hacks." So he grabs my bat. We put a token in, and he hit 18 balls in a row at 90, whatever the 75 to 90, whatever the speed was. He's 77, just so you know. And it's just one of those things where you kind of, I think, like it's an instinct at some point, and that's what I think a lot of these hitters, we're seeing with the Braves tonight. They're not thinking a whole lot; they are reacting. And the Dodgers, I think, it looks like to me they're thinking a little bit too much, or are thinking about the analytics or what pitches might come, versus being aggressive and just basically I'm swinging at every pitch until it's a ball.
Right.
And that's something I see that all the time when I'm out watching some of my players, at a game, and I'm like, dude, you were 5 times more aggressive in the cage this past weekend than you were in the game today. What the hell's going on? It's like, I forgot about that. Well, that's kind of the most important thing. I think when you're in the game is being the hunter and not the hunted, as we talk about all the time.
And
so
when
anyway,
we're watching, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I got off tangent a little bit, but go ahead.
Well, what I was going to say is, like Benny observed, when you're watching a game and you hear something from someone like Joe Morgan or John Smoltz, those guys played the game, and so they have a lot more insight. That's why they're there. That's why they're announcing. Love him or hate him, and apparently people do one or the other. There's no in between. I like A-Rod as an announcer, as a commentator, and as an analyst.
Me too.
In fact, there's A-Rod right there sitting behind me. There's A-Rod.
Oh, there he is.
In his Mariners
uniform.
He is. A-Rod's always in my house here. And so,
wait, in a Mariners uniform?
Yeah, that's how I like to remember him. So,
okay.
I've got a trivia question tonight. Let me get to that real quick. I know we're running short of time here. So, Danny D in Las Vegas, our regular listener, Danny D asks, do the three of us know who is the only manager to win the Manager of the Year award 4 times? 4 times. And just so you guys know, the award was not created until 1983. That was the first time they awarded
the Manager of the Year
award.
So it wasn't Ty Cobb. Ty Cobb didn't win it.
Was not Ty Cobb.
Okay, got that. Okay. Okay, I'm going to say...
Could not be Rick Rhoden. It's not Rick Rhoden.
Not Rick Rhoden either. No. Okay, so what year was it created again, Eric?
I'm sorry, I missed you guys for a second there.
Oh, what year?
1983 it was created.
Okay, then it was Tony La Russa.
Why would you guess Tony La Russa?
A's and Cardinals and White Sox.
Okay, well, you're absolutely right. Tony La Russa did win the award 4 times. He managed for 33 years. Okay, and that's another reason why I'm saying, why are they even talking about him with the White Sox now? But he managed 33 years with the White Sox, the A's, and the Cardinals, 3 organizations. Won with all of them, but he won the award in 83, the inaugural Manager of the Year award. He was the winner with the White Sox. 1988, when the A's lost to the Dodgers in the Kirk Gibson World Series, he won that year. 1992, when the A's didn't make it to the World Series, he won the Manager of the Year again. And then in 2002 with the Cardinals. So,
but 2021,
hopefully,
he could win it with the White Sox again.
Yeah. So I'll be right back, you guys.
Yeah, he won it in both leagues, so that's impressive. And Jerry Reinsdorf, we all want to reach into our past to try to be successful and take lessons from that. That doesn't mean that you need to hire the same manager that you had 30 years ago. I mean, that's just. And I honestly hope Tony doesn't do it. I really hope he does.
Yeah, me too.
Again, to me, it's more of how is that? There's a big generation gap. These guys, this is like their great grandpa's age guy. You know what I mean? Like as a player,
When it comes to baseball, they won't even be speaking the same language as we were.
Well, yeah, and one of the things that you I think you really want to think about with this generation, these kids, they grew up on the internet. Like they didn't know that there was a life without the internet.
Right.
And you have to, that's their daily life. The social media is so important to these kids. It's almost more important than real friends. Like they right. mattered when we were growing up. And you get a bad you get someone who's yanking your chain on Facebook or on Instagram or what have you. That's actually a painful thing for young people. And I laugh. I'm like, dude, I don't know who you are. Just go click, gone, you're out. Whatever.
Yeah.
I don't take it personal. And it appears like that is, and the kids that I train, they're really hyper vigilant on their social media presence and their, it's just a whole another, and how can an older guy who, probably, I don't know, he might have an iPhone, I don't know, but probably doesn't use it the same way these young guys do, really be able to interact with them or I don't know, there's a lot of variables. I don't want to seem like I'm sounding like age discrimination because I'm an older guy, but I think I'm right at the top.
But,
well, I'm right at the top of that level where, or the middle of that layer of, iPhones are, whatever didn't come out until in my 30s. I had to learn how to use them when I got into my 30s,
Right.
So all that time before, I was analog Jim, like you, analog Eric, right? Meanwhile, Benny, who's got a few less years on him than we do,
quite a few less, yeah.
Probably got a cell phone in his later in his teens, and that was, or somewhere in that area, teens, 20s, So, but just having
guys, by the way, for the lighting here. So that's what I was.
Oh, it's all good.
I went off camera. One thing I've noticed with cell phones, real quickly. Again, we're running out of time here, but I was watching a Dodger game last season, and they were showing Sandy Koufax sitting in the stands, and he was on his phone texting someone, and he was using his index finger, one letter at a time. And I saw that, and I remember thinking, you know what? That's that generation probably doesn't like to text in the first place, but since you have to do it, you text it. I bet your dad does the same thing, Jim.
Yeah, he's a.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'm like, Dad, use your thumbs. Like God gave us that. We're the only animals that have thumbs.
Yeah.
But no, that's again. I think that's I think that's a really important consideration to make for any manager that's coming into the major leagues right now.
Right.
I'd like to see LaRusso finish up and do one more year at the Angels. Pujols last year of his deal. Those guys kind of go out together right into the sunset. And even though Pujols has said it may not be his last year, but unless he goes for like a swan song year with the Cardinals or something, I don't see it going on.
I don't think LaRusso will be back managing. At this point, I'm going to let people know how to get a hold of us or how to get a hold of me. You can get me on Twitter at Dr. Baseball, at Eric Lenaburg. Send me direct messages there, and that's where I get the email that I read on the show. Also on Facebook, you can direct message me. Follow us on Spotify and Anchor and whatever your platform. Follow us on Spotify, definitely. And now, I don't know what platform you're watching this show on tonight, but it's going to be available on YouTube, Spotify, all these other places too. So now you get to see, I don't know where Benny went off to, but now you get to see the three of us as we actually appear in real life. And so that's the way to get a hold of me. The other thing is Jim and I do a show called Driving Him In. That's an interview show. It usually takes about an hour. And so, there's the logo right there. You want to follow us on Spotify there too. There's a lot of lot of shows that are archived there. So, Jim, how do they get a hold of you?
Yeah, Facebook is my primary social media, but it feeds into Twitter. And I'm starting to get more into Instagram a little bit, but I'm also on, I have a YouTube channel if you like watching, and I have I couldn't believe I have 100 subscribers, and most of them are college coaches that are looking at the players that I'm training, because I put hitting videos up all the time. You can check some of those out. And then bornintobaseball.com, give you a little bit more information about the book. You can pretty much click on anything and it goes right to Amazon, where my primary store is set up. And the book hit #1 2 years ago. It hit #8 this past year. Trying to get it back up into the top 5 again. We'll have maybe a little promotion coming up next baseball season. And then I have another book that's written. I just need to figure out when to put it out. So,
let me just tease our next show real quick, because Jim, you told me a story one time. You were talking about your grandpa's suite earlier at the stadium where he worked, because he actually worked at those games. He wasn't just sitting watching the game. You told me a story about your dad bringing Rob Reiner, the actor, up to
my uncle. So my uncle, yeah.
Is your uncle? Okay. Want to save that for next week. So you listeners, it's a funny story, believe me. So, okay, Benny.
Yeah, guys, you can reach us at the Backstop Show.
There it is.
Behind me there. The Backstop Show is our Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, all that kind of stuff. Where you can find us there, Anchor, Spotify, Apple Podcast, all that stuff. It's the Backstop Show. Check that out. You can find me at Angels Baseball Addicts, which of course you can always contribute to respectfully on Facebook, Twitter, and whatnot. And we currently are in the middle of our campaign to convince Trevor Bauer to go to Anaheim. So we really need pitching, and any help that anybody could give us there, we would really appreciate. And of course, yes, of course, the red.
Come on, Trevor. Come on, Trevor.
The red faithful. Yes, Trevor. Don't you want to play with the GOAT? Don't you want to play with Mike Trout? Come on. We got Rendon behind him. Like, come on. Run support's not going to be an issue. You can give up 4 runs a game.
That's right. That's right. I think that's a huge.
They can win 10-4 now instead of 10-9.
In all seriousness, that's a huge
don't even
thing.
Need you. The Dodgers don't even need you.
In all seriousness,
neither do the Yankees.
In all seriousness, that's huge to a guy like Bauer, that he's going to go to a team that has offense, where he can have a bad night and give up 4 runs and still win. So that's my 2 cents.
You can have whatever corner that you want to own the Grove. Just talk to Artie. We'll work it out. Whatever you want to do. You want part of that? You want a little apartment complex over in the corner? We'll work that stuff out. So working on Trevor Bauer. Hey, Stroman, if you're listening, we could take Stroman too. I mean, hey, why not? Hey, let's do it. So guys, amazing stuff going on. And as you guys can see, we've been joking this whole time. I always talk about how Jim's wearing the catcher gear and stuff, and he's not actually wearing the catcher's gear right now, but he promised that he would next week. So we got it coming next week. He's going to wear the gear live on the show. So it's coming back on, guys, and no pass balls, none of that one knee stuff. We're gonna get that figured out. So.
Nope. Yeah. Blocking it with anything we got.
Yeah. So awesome stuff today. Always a privilege being here with you two gentlemen and talking in whatever format we do and whatever show.
Right back at you, Benny. I enjoy doing this with you. Jim and I have talked about it. You're awesome.
Absolutely,
guys. It's always fun. I'm sorry that the Dodgers aren't having their best game yet, but it's not over, and the best could still be yet to come, Eric. You never know. So
you never know.
With that lineup, you never know. So
we'll know by the time we have another show, one way or the other.
We will.
So.
Yeah, we will know that. And once again, congratulations to the Los Angeles Lakers on championship number 17. My team, absolutely, we bow down. And I just got to say, Lakers faithful, it's time to get off LeBron James' back. He did it.
And thank you, Lakers fans, for not raping and looting our town. I appreciate it as well. Thank you.
I thought it was big of them. It was really big of them.
It was.
Yeah. All right, guys. Until next time on the Backstop, Benny Bam, Jim Campanis Jr., Eric Lenaburg, coming back.
Have a great week, everyone.
See you guys.